Okay, so start with your feet hip width apart and maybe just rock back and forth, wiggle your toes, and start to feel the connection of the energy from the soles of your feet down into the earth. And let's slightly bend the knees. Inhale, reach the arms all the way up as you straighten the legs. And as you exhale, let the shoulders soften while the arms still stay lifted. So now there's space between your ears and your shoulders. Inhale again, feel the heart lifting. And as you exhale, just part your hands down to the sides like you were coming up from underwater, the crown of your head lifting through the surface. And bring the hands to your heart. As you inhale, reach out as though you're willing to receive this little basket. Inhaling, drawing the energy into your heart center. Keep extending the inhalation. And then as you exhale, just let yourself fold and hang. And let the crown of your head drop towards the floor. Turn your head left and right, just releasing the back of the neck. Gently bend the knees, feel the spine soften and relax. And with the inhalation, bend your knees a little deeper. Feel the energy rising again from the soles of the feet up the legs, and roll yourself up to standing vertebrae by vertebrae, allowing the heart to come up before the head, shoulders roll back, then the crown of the head lifting. As you breathe in, feel the crown of the head lifting a little higher. As you exhale, feel the jaw softening and the shoulders dropping again. Now take the fingertips to the tops of the shoulders, draw the elbows together, breathing in and breathing out. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Now the whole arm, like you were lifting a big heavy sweater off. Then exhaling, release, cross your arms the other way, just going back. Maybe there's another layer you want to just cleanse your aura with, and release. Now let the chin drop forward. Inhale. As you exhale, roll the right ear towards the right shoulder, creating space between the left ear and the left shoulder, allowing the tendons on the side of the neck to soften. Inhale deeply, exhale, roll the chin forward and over to the other side. Same thing. Now the right shoulder feels like there's maybe like a brick on it. Just feel it, let it feel very heavy. And then inhale, let the chin drop forward, let the back of the neck release. Exhale fully, inhale, lift the crown of the head, and then with the tip of the nose, circle, like you were drawing circles on a surface in front of you with the tip of the nose. And let that motion go the other way, and let the breath just kind of soften any crunchy areas. Allow this motion to spiral inward. So you come to a very still place and you feel there's almost a pillow of air between the top vertebrae of the spine and the base of the skull. And you feel the crown of the head again, lifting and opening. Gently open your eyes, let yourself come to sitting. Sorry about that, I forgot to turn off my notification. So let yourself now come to sitting, feel the weight of your in your chair. You might want to mute yourself if you haven't, or I can mute. No, it'll take too long for me to mute everybody, sorry. Okay, so let your eyes close and begin to focus now just on the breath. And as you inhale, feel the exterior world begin to soften. And breathing in through the nose. Feel the breath filling the lungs. And exhaling out the mouth. And breathing in. And breathing out. And just allowing the breath to really bring you into the present moment. and exhaling, and let this cyclical breath, connecting the inhalation, the exhalation, become almost like a shower inside of you that's quieting the brain, letting the mind relax, and preparing yourself to be very empty to receive and relax and create. Now bring your attention to the space between the eyebrows. Let that area soften and follow with your mind's eye back into the center of the brain. Keep connecting the breath. Feel the crown of the head begin to open as your crown chakra opens up and allows light to come in from above down through the crown of the head. Feel that cascading like an effervescent light into the middle of the brain, and let it come like a shower inside of the skull, just cleansing, letting the thoughts slow down. Feel it coming behind the eyes, behind the eyelids, behind the cheeks, this almost like a tingling effervescence down through the palate of the mouth, down the throat, softening the shoulders, going down through the chest, into the belly, and then allowing this energy to gather and pool into your hips, creating this reservoir of creative energy in your first, second chakra, your seat of creativity. Maybe place your palms of your hands just below the belly button there, on your belly, connecting with your creative center. And just enjoy the quietness and this feeling of cleansing, renewing, and rejuvenating. Notice if any thoughts begin to enter. Just notice them, being the observer. Watch them come in, and then allow them just to float on by like clouds, knowing that your subconscious mind will bring them back to you if they're important, if you need to address them later. Just let them float on by. And now, keeping the eyes closed, imagine that your space between your eyebrows is widening, and with your mind's eye, you have a sense that you are out in the middle of a field, and you can feel the breeze, you can hear birds chirping, you can see maybe you can see this field with the tree at a far end, and there's a sense that everything, your other senses are heightened, the colors are brightened, the sense of sunlight is stronger, and you see a pathway leading towards this tree in the distance. There's 10 stones, and you're ready to walk on these 10 stones, allowing your body to relax and prepare your subconscious to open up to your creative side and to feel relaxed and receptive. So stepping on now from the 10th step to the 9th step, as you exhale, feel your whole body relax and release. And stepping now from the 9th step to the 8th step, feeling your nerves soften, relax, and release. Stepping now from the 7th to the 6th step, feeling really good, really relaxed. Stepping now from the 6th to the 5th step, inhaling and exhaling, feeling very receptive, very free. Stepping from the 5th to the 4th, feeling all of your energy just soften and flow. Your body feels very light. All your muscles are very fluid. Stepping from the 4th to the 3rd step, as you're getting closer to this tree, the sound of the birds is getting brighter. Stepping now from the 3rd to the 2nd step, feeling very good, very relaxed, and just feeling empty and ready. And now stepping onto the 1st step, feeling incredibly present and open, noticing, being the observer, just feeling very present. And just focusing on the breath and receiving any messages that might come to you. And just following the breath. So we're going to take 3 more breaths on our own here, just in the quiet of the middle of our brain. See what comes, if anything presents. You can ask specifically if you'd like something to present itself, an answer or a symbol. And then as we prepare to open our eyes, let's deepen our breath. Take a deep inhalation and fill your lungs all the way to the top as though you were filling a glass of water all the way to the rim. Taking a little bit more, and then exhale with an open mouth. And then when you're ready, gently open your eyes. And hopefully your mind feels a little bit quieter than when we got here. So I'm going to pause the recording. Yeah, so the birds are going to be a little bit off center to the right. And then because this is a pretty simple, compared to some of the subjects we've been doing lately, we're going to be able to revisit a lot of the techniques we've already done. So for instance, the birds are going to be wet into wet like we've done with the flowers, and Paula, like you did with the sheep, there's going to be some similarity there. The edges around the birds are going to be hard edge, but inside the body is going to see, you can see here, it's very unpainted, just blooms of color. This one got a little funky, but it still looks great. Imperfect. It's nice to have, you know, a little bit of imperfection. Then we're going to work on, you can, throughout the whole painting, we're going to try to keep the paper moist, not super wet, but moist enough so that when we draw these, when we paint the little feet and such, they're going to soften in to the, you'll see as we touch here, they're going to soften into the branch. And I'm kind of just giving you a heads up, like if you were cooking, I'm going to give you all the steps here so you know, like, you know, like before you bake a cake, you read all the steps and then you go through them one by one. The branch is going to be, so overall it's cool colors with a tiny bit. So lots of our colors have blue in them. And then the opposite side of the color wheel from blue is orange. So we're going to do these complementary orange beaks and a little bit of orange in these little buds. Again, any of this, you can break the rules and do whatever feels right to you as you're painting if that changes, but overall. And so all of our shadows here are going to be kind of grayish blue. And these oranges are going to echo each other. Then we're going to practice doing dappled light in the background with the side of our brush. And we're not going to be afraid to touch the subject in a few places. Let some blurs happen. You see under here, because we want the painting to feel very informal, very much that the viewer can, how can I say, inviting the viewer in, not having it be too stiff. We'll have the opportunity to practice our leaves with one, you know, push and lift like we've done before. And we'll be able to do the leaves where we do them and then we put some water through them and then do them again. So it looks like they're layered. Some are farther away in the background and some are closer and more in focus. And then we get to splatter a little bit. We could do it twice. First splatter, they'll disappear and they'll soften. And then some of the splatters will be a little bit darker. So I think that's pretty much most of what we're going to do. You could see with these birds, the eyes are very close to the beaks. I'll walk you through. We're gonna draw placeholders first. And they have these kind of shallow foreheads. I don't even know what kind of birds these are. I just kind of made them up, but they're chubby and cute. Okay, so quick pause. Okay, so we're going to start with drawing. And we pretty much, when I say drawing, it's just a placeholder. So we're just going to kind of note to ourselves where the center is, because we want to be off center so that the eye moves across the page. Oh, you can see the birds. And then I'm going to start with the birds and put the branch in under, because they are the main focus here. So if I come to the center of the page, and I'm just going to draw a circle, it's like bigger than a little bit bigger than that's more like a $50. And I want them very close to each other. So I'm going to put the other one. They don't have to be exactly the same size, close. And remember, hopefully everyone has the kneaded eraser, so you can erase and you can feel as you're doing these placeholders, you don't have to be too perfect, because you're going to go back and erase some of these lines. And then for their heads, we're going to do a little oval on top. And then we're going to, at least how I do it is now I shift to more of my handheld, hold the pencil this way. And I'm just going to design their body, just connect the head and neck. Now mine are really close. These two came out closer than the other ones, so I'll kind of make a few adjustments here. But maybe I'm going to let them touch this time. And then I'm going to just take a little placeholder for a beak to the left on that one, and beak forward here, just a V. And the eye on this one, so the beak comes in, you see here, comes in, and then the eye is very close. And I'm going to leave a white spot in the middle, so I'll just do like 2 lines on either side. And maybe a little line on top to indicate the lid on top. Tiny. And then over here, the eyes are kind of, you can do them how as you wish. Tinier is better. You can always make them bigger later. If they're too big, they start to look weird. Trust me, I did this painting with too big of eyes and had to redo it over. Now, once you have all that, okay, let's see. I'll let you guys catch up. And notice where they are on the page. They are leaving enough room for a branch underneath. So the branch is going to come in from the left side. Well, actually, I'll do the feet first so we know where we're heading. So just, if you look at if you go to the head, the feet are closer together than the widest points of the head. They're just little lines to designate. Maybe use this one, the center of the beak, to be the center point between the legs. And again, it's all relativity. So if you were doing this without me, notice how I started was just looking for the main shapes, placing placeholders that allow me, like markers, almost like drawing a map, where it's all relative. All the lines are relative, just like the colors are relative. So now I'm going to come in for this branch. It's going to start, you see how much is about, I'd say, like less, it's a little bit more than 1.5 inches, or less than 1 inch from the bottom. And I like it to start lower and go higher. It gives a sense of movement, and I'm just using kind of inching my way across slightly. And I'd like it to be wider to thinner. And I'm going to put in a few little like wispy areas. I made that a little thick, I think. I feel like I needed more room beyond this bird here at the end. Some of this you can paint. You don't necessarily have to draw every line. So just check that this side of your branch is fatter than the one on the right. And you can give your branch, if you want more character, it could be more wavy. Mine's kind of straight. Whatever feels good. My other one was more wavy. Maybe I'll give it a little bit more of a. Okay. So now that I have most of my placeholders, I'm going to use my soft eraser, get it nice and soft. And I'm going to go in and erase these inner lines. These were my guidelines to give the body form. And then I'm also going to use my eraser like Silly Putty used to put it on the newspaper, but I just want to lift any excess graphite so it doesn't muddy my colors. But I don't mind seeing pencil lines in my drawing. I think they're quite beautiful. I think that the transparency of watercolors invites the viewer in, shows the viewer some of the steps you took. And it's nice to see those decisions that artists make. So I'm just erasing some of them. And here I'm just going to be curious to see what happens. I put the birds touching this time. You don't have to. I'm kind of curious to see how I'm going to solve that problem when I get there. But I like the idea of them touching. Okay, so I'm going to pause this for a minute and check in with you all before we start painting. We're going to just fill. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to work left to right. And I try to the degree that I can work left to right and from the top down so my hand doesn't get into my painting. And so only if you're left-handed like Holly, you'll go the other way. And I'd suggest that. So really simple. I'm not even, my blues, I have them nearby. I'm not even, I mean, I guess I could wet them a little bit, but I'm wetting them right on.
Which blues again?
So cobalt, ultramarine, you want 3 blues. You can see here, this guy has like a cobalt or whatever blues you have. It doesn't matter really so much. I'm using more of a lighter blue. I'm just letting the 3 blues and a turquoise and some green in here all mixed together and purple. But I haven't really even prepared them. I'm just activating them a little bit by dabbing just a bit of water on them. That's all you really need to do. Just get them a little bit wet. And now make sure your brush is super clean. Get your brush really clean. And we're going to fill in the body of the bird starting, around the edge. And this is going to you're going to feel light and easy, no worries, doesn't have to be perfect. So I got a lot of water. I left some open white space in the middle. And then I'm going to go into one of my blues. I'm going to start with the lighter blue here and just do the cap of his head and let it, just like we did with the flowers, super easy. Just let it blur. When I start to see a blur, I try to move on and let that just spread on its own. I don't want to be too controlling at this point. This is going to be my first layer, and this is what I'm going to I'll come back to later. As I move down the body, I'll go into a little bit darker blue here. Oops. Darker because it's this shadow down below. And I'm just having fun letting the watercolor flow. I gotta grab a paper towel. Okay, so this got a little wet, so I'm going to soak up some with a damp brush. But I'm still trying to keep, the only hard edges are on the outside. And now I want to have some reflected green in there. So I'm going to go into my green, dab a little bit of green. Oops, that's. It came out purple instead of green. Because on the color wheel, green is next to blue and next to turquoise. So this looks a little darker. So I'm also thinking that the light is coming from this side. So I'm going to start to put a little bit more blue. Maybe, yeah, a little bit more blue. I might mix in my turquoise, a different turquoise now on this side, the shadow side. So really, color is so relative that it doesn't necessarily have to be the same colors I'm using. It's more about having warm and cool and dark and light, and that will create, and just be willing to explore a little bit here. So I want some more color to come into the belly. I'm going to do a little bit more green down below here while it's wet, so I get some soft edges. I just wiped my brush. And I want there to feel like this is coming in under his, like his head, the difference between the shadow from his head onto his body. So I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there. Got very dark, so I'm just going to add some water and let it blur. Soften that. Now I think I'm just going to let that dry. I might add a tiny bit of a lighter green. You can mix some yellow into your green to get it lighter. Just put that in. This had started to dry, so I'm going to soften the edge. There. Okay. So you guys try that. I'm going to stop the recording for a minute. So now we're going to do the other bird, but take your time. I saw some people were already done. I'm going to make this bird a little, and this bird was on the color wheel, blues and greens, right? So this bird next to it, it's on the right side, it's a little bit more in the shadow. It's going to be more blues and purples. So I'm going to use the same exact technique. I'm going to fill in starting around the edge of the body, the head, sorry, and then the body. And I think I'm going to, because I made mine very close, I'm going to touch and let this blur in a little bit naturally, because I love when watercolors feel connected and uncontrolled. I'm going to make this guy's body fill up with water. Now I'm noticing because I let that blur, I'm going to have to put a little bit more pigment in here while it's still wet. Because it dries lighter. Now I'm going to put the same technique, this time a little bit darker blue. And you might get a surprise. It looks like a wing, so you just leave it, like don't try to, I'm not going to control this part because something's happening that's really cool. I'm resting my hand, if I want control, on top of my other hand. Kind of like them both to have the same, this time, similar color on top of the head, but I want to add some purple. I'm going to add some water here because I don't want, the water to keep the soft belly. I know this is going to dry lighter. I might put a little bit of green up here. So they look similar. They're kind of like Easter eggs. Now, I'm going to let that dry a little bit. This one's dry enough. I'm going to come back. I'm going to wipe my brush and then dip into my blue, a darker blue, my ultramarine blue, dry the brush, get it to a nice tip. And so it's still damp. I'm just going to make a little stroke indicating that's all. The wing, because it's wet, it's going to start to blur into there. And I might do a little bit more, just not much. And I think I'll bring a little bit down here. That's all. It should all just feel like, oh, was really effortless, this painting. She just feels good. People like it because it's so effortless. Don't want to overwork it. So I'll let that dry before I do the beak and the eyes. And when everyone's ready, we will move on to the branch. I'm assuming you need more time before the branch, right? Because you want to babysit this a little bit as it dries if you want to add more pigment, because it will start to. So I'll give you a close-up of mine here. See how soft the belly area and the inner, so there's a bit of a hard edge there. That's going to work. That'll look like a shadow of the head, and it doesn't have to be perfect. But in general, mostly the hard edges are on the outside and all the soft edges are blurring together, mixing on the page. You can see this one has soft and some hard edges. I'm just going to take a peek and see how everyone's doing. I can tell everybody's. How's it going, Anne? You haven't been here in a while. It's just.
Oh, I still haven't quite got this whole water thing, but after I let it dry, it always looks a lot better. But I don't know what it is I'm doing. It's not quite right, but
that's okay. It's the most important thing is that this hour and a half of your life, you think of nothing else, and it's a meditation for you. As the more you just play around with watercolors, either with us or on your own, you're going to just gain confidence and you'll start to get to know your materials. It's not, everyone has different talents. Some people might get it a little quicker, but it really doesn't matter. The biggest takeaway is allowing yourself to relax. Notice how much we judge ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a good opportunity to see, okay, well, I made a mistake, but that's okay. Or I didn't do that the way I wanted, and start to really cultivate a very keen awareness of how we talk to ourselves. That's what this is.
That is a great point.
Yeah.
We had this discussion last week in my Weight Watchers meeting. I was supposed to be working on that all this week. And
so here's the perfect time to work on it. Basically what it is that your dialogue with yourself, you want to be similar to the way you would talk to a child or someone that you really love, right? Yourself.
Yeah, right.
Okay, sorry, there's sounds in the background here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start on the branch. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to make it wet, fill it in, and then I'm going to go with because what I guess what you call the local color, the branch is kind of a green color. So I'm going to start with green, but then I'm going to add these shadows of grays and blues and reflected lights. So here we go.
Which color are we starting?
I'm starting with green because that's what's called the local color. That's the, if there was no shadow, if you had no, if you cut that branch off and put it under a spotlight, you'd say that's green. But in the painting, it's not green. It's going to have grays and blues, but I'm starting with the local. That's going to be the underneath color. And you'll see, I'll also leave some white. So I'm just going to fill in the brush in the same way. And I want to go I want to do this while the rest of the painting's not completely dry yet. Filling in this branch with water. And then, sorry, going into some green, just activating some green.
Wendra, is this part of the paper dry?
Yes, it was dry, but I just filled in just the branch with water.
Oh, you did. Okay, just missed that.
Filled the whole branch in with water, and now I'm putting in some green, starting at the bottom of it. Lost and found. See, I'm just floating it in. So it should spread in there a little into the water and give that little bit of texture that bark has. Maybe it's a little bit darker areas under the birds. You want it to be uneven and organic. So just let yourself have fun with it. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to go into my blue, my ultramarine, my darker blue. I'm just leaving the green on my brush, wiping the sides of my brush. My dog's ringing the bell. He wants to go out, but we have people in the garden. And I'm resting my hand so I have control over my tip of my brush and just coming in on the underside and creating like a shadow here. Lost and found. Maybe a little texture. And now, so it doesn't look so cartoony, I'm going to go into my gray because I want it to stay. If you don't have gray, you can mix. Does anybody not have a gray?
I don't have
gray.
Okay, so if you don't have gray, you could just add a tiny bit of warm red to your blue, and it'll gray it down like that. And that'll be your gray. So I want some neutrals in here because I want my other colors to pop. So I'm just putting little bit of, I want it to mix with this green. And now while the green's still wet, I'm going to use this gray to make my little feet. And you see I'm just going to touch it here. They're just spreading into the green because it's still damp. I'm just dotting them. I'm not drawing them. I'm just placing more pigment there. And it's okay that my branch has open areas because I'll probably come in and hit some oranges like sunlight later. But I wanted to get it, and I wanted to work on a lot of it while it was wet so I could have some blurry areas.
Is that gray? Like you did a green and then did you put like another darker green or
I started with green and then you can either do darker green. I did blue under the bottom.
okay.
And then I mixed a gray by adding a little tiny bit of red to my blue. I did a little bit of areas here. Okay. Now I'm going to wash my brush. Let you guys catch up. Wipe my brush. I'm going to take my green and I mix a little bit of yellow into my green so it has a very spring yellowy light green. wiping the sides of my brush. And I'm going to do a few of these smaller branches. I'm going to decide I want one to come down in the foreground. And one here, and move up. I wipe my brush off so it doesn't have any water in the barrel. Then I'm going to do a few of these leaves, the ones we've done before. So I'm going to start with the tip, push down and lift. Start at the tip, push down. And, oops, that one got a little big. Whoops. I'll just blur that one in. I think I'll just do one here. Got my cord in the way. I feel like I need to wipe my brush a little bit more. So the leaves at the tip, I want to be smaller. And then I make a big one. There we go. The ones at the tip of the branch, I want to be smaller. The ones over here, I want to be a little bit bigger. Pilot, you can't go out. Just a minute. I'm going to pause the recording for a minute and check in with you guys. So for the leaves, I'm going into you can practice on a side if you have an extra piece of watercolor paper, hopefully, maybe, or on the side of your paper. You're going to have a lot of pigment in your paint. And you're going to wipe the brush to a point. And then you're going to practice. Oh, let me spotlight this. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, so you're just gonna, so now my brush is almost like a pancake. I've wiped it on both sides. And I start with the tip, and then as I move it, I push and I lift. You just push and lift. And just think of like, you can be a little practice doing tinier ones. You might want to use a smaller brush, bigger brush. So you want to just start, it's almost like calligraphy. It is calligraphy or sumi painting. So you just want to get, you're not so much illustrating as much as you're just using the thickness of the brush to show the thickness of the leaf. See? Did that help you, Anne, I hope?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm fine with the leaves. It's the water that messes me up.
It is watercolor painting.
I know. Hard part. Oh my gosh.
It's like everything. The things that are the most potent, that they always have two sides to them. Like anything that can make a big change in your life can be misused or used properly. Getting very philosophical here, better pause in here all the time. Okay, so now our birds are pretty dry, so we can, at this point, go in and do, you're going to need a very tiny brush. Hopefully everyone has a tiny brush, I hope, or get your other brush to a tip. Or if you don't, you can even probably use a marker for this, I guess. I'm going to start with the beak. I'm just going to go into my orange, which looks like a dirty mess here. Or I'll go into this. I'm going to start, get my brush to a point. I'm going to start on the bottom, underneath side of the beak. Do the line in the bottom first. And then wipe my brush even more, and then do the top so it's a little bit lighter. I may not be able to control that. I might have to go back in later, but I don't want it to be too perfect. So now I'm wiping my brush like a sponge and lifting a little bit, so it's a little lighter on the top. On this one, I want it to be a little darker on the right. It's just a V, and then carrying that over. And then now I'll float some orange at the tip and on the right side. So it gives the illusion that the light's coming from the left. I can lift a little bit here and add a little bit more underneath. I might even just go into my brown a teeny tiny bit, because brown, like a darker orange is brown. Almost like eyeliner, put a little bit on the bottom of the beak here, just to create. It's not accepting it, I have to wait. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my bigger brush. And I had 3 brushes here. Oh, yeah, I do. Get it nice and clean. I'm going in the water, you can't see. I'm going to go into my orange. And I'm going to create some buds of orange. These are going to be lighter and smaller over here. Being very like, you want to kind of be quick and easy and have fun with it so that the viewer has fun looking at it. You don't want it to be too perfect. These orange is really just kind of carrying the eye across, warming up, creating a complement to the blue, and echoing the beak. And now I'm going to go, while I have my bigger brush, I'm going to wet it, clean it, get all the warm orange off. I'm going to do the background, which I'm going to start with a soft turquoise. We need a clean palette for this. So it's going to be watery. I'm using my brush to transport water into the well, and then going into first my warmer, lighter turquoise. So if you have a peacock blue, you could use that, or even a phthalo blue. I'm just getting this watery turquoise. I'm going to use the side of my brush. And I like to, so that there's light coming from this side and it's moving across the darker side. So I'm going to think about that as I'm doing this, but because I'm right-handed, I'm going to work from left to right. And I'm just thinking of going quick, having fun, thinking of dappled light as though there were branches around me, and I might even add some in the background. I'm going to touch this bird and like just blur it a little bit, maybe even touch down here into
Which color is that?
turquoise, or you have a peacock blue that you're going to add a lot of water to. And I'm
And wet into dry?
yeah, right onto the dry paper. And then I'm just using the side of the brush to get this feeling of dappled light, leaving some blocks of white areas and coming down below, leaving, I'm not touching every part of the page. Now that I've got this first pass of like a turquoisey, now I'm going to go into my cobalt, or you could, if you don't have cobalt, you could even do, I'll do a tiny bit of ultramarine, but very washy. And I want it to be darker on the right side, a little bit darker underneath the branch. And I want to touch, you want to experiment, don't be afraid, touch some of these areas to let the birds and the branch blur. Here I'm going to even just go right through the branch a little bit with water.
So is this ultramarine?
This is a wash of whatever blue you want. We started with the lightest, like turquoise, and now I'm using ultramarine because I don't think everybody has a turquoise. But you, I would prefer if you have turquoise, that when you use ultramarine in the sky, it gets kind of gray and cloudy. So if you have a turquoise, use it. If you have a ultramarine, then use it like a wash. But the important part is to use the side of your brush, and don't be afraid to just through in a few areas and blur a little bit. I want you to just feel confident to not have this be so. Now, while it's wet, while it's still wet, I'm gonna go into green. So it's almost like leaves. Very saturated, nice, watery. There's a lot of water in the barrel. You can practice on this. I'm just going to go for it. You do some splatter. I want to do it while this back is still wet, so it softens into the page. Now, this was drying up here a little bit, so I'm going to just have to lift where it got a little dark. There. Okay, and I might still here while it's still wet, I'm going to go into my green again. I want it to be a little bit more of a dry green. I'm wiping to the tip. Sorry, my cord. I'm going to put a branch in the background here. So it's wet. Let's see what happens. Let's imagine that maybe there's a branch coming up from here. You don't have to do this, but I encourage you to be experimental. See how it's starting to disappear into the water? It's going to look like it's farther in the back. So I want to mute it. I don't want it to be such a bright green color. So I'm going to add a little bit of orange to my green. Tiny bit, just enough to put a little bit of orange in there. Maybe a tiny bit of black. The shortcut is to add a tiny bit of gray. I don't like to use black, but I'm just trying to neutralize it a little bit. It's a little bright. A little bit more, maybe a tiny bit of red. I want to dull it out. This probably isn't as dull as I want, but no. I'm going to use my paper towel. Now, since it dried, you get to see me go through this. I'm going to just use plain water and I'm going to soften this a little bit. And what I'm wanting to do here is have this kind of lost and found branch in the background. There we go. Let's see if I can get, maybe if I add a little bit of purple to my notes. Some ultramarine to this sagey green that I mixed. There we go. I put a little ultramarine into this kind of sagey green I had going. And this is going to look a little bit more gray here. So here's the thing. It's great to study color. Mostly it's just the color wheel, but it's really about relativity. So you put in and then you try. It's like mixing drinks. You don't really know what you're going to get until you give it a go, right? So now I'm just going back and creating some darker areas. It dried in some. I like having a darker leaf near a lighter leaf. I'm not covering it up completely, but it pushes that lighter leaf behind and it makes it look like it's in the distance. You see how this one comes forward, and the other ones start to sink into the background.
Did you add leaves to the left branch, the recent branches you made?
Did I add leaves here?
No, up there.
Here.
Yes.
Yes. I wet this and then I put more leaves in. because I was demoing, I wanted to show that this branch looks like it's farther in the background, like when you take a photograph. So I put it into the wet, and then afterwards I went in with some gray, and you'll be able to see it in the video. If you did, if you were, maybe you were thinking and painting, that's fine. I'll do a little bit more here. But I wanted to have this kind of lost and found branch in the background, and you'll see it in the video. This branch is more contrasty, brighter in color, and more solid shape. One in the background kind of disappears. Okay, so now I'm going to do the eye. Are you guys ready to do? Does anyone need me to wait before I do the eyes? No? Okay. So I'm going to use my tiniest brush. I'm so sorry. I've got to turn those. I'm going to make myself a note. Turn off notification. Right, this is being recorded, but I'll forget after class. Okay, now the eyes are, you really want to do really tiny. So I'm going to go into the black, and I want to make sure that, so if you, my eye, first of all, you can see it's kind of funny. The eye on this type of bird, whatever type of bird it is very close to the beak. So you want to make sure that's where you can kind of like, is it in line with the beak? And I'm going to do like a little upside down. I'm going to make sure my point is very pointy. Just want a tiny eye. And I'm just going to do like a little upside down U. Smaller is better. I might even have to. I'm going to just put a dot on either side of this white. Leaving a white area. If you lose your white area, you can go back in with white gouache. They just threw the frisbee. Could you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Throwing the frisbee for the dog outside. I live with teenagers. Okay. And then these little eyes here, you see they're also very close to the beak. So if you go up from the corner of each side of the triangle, you just do like a little upside down. Now, if you want to, like you're looking, you go back and just kind of analyze your picture. I feel like I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow under his head on this one. And I feel like it needs, I'm going to try it to be reflected light. I could do blue, but I think I'll start, if I start with a lighter blue, I can always go darker, but it's going to be hard if I start with a very intense. If I started with marine, it will be hard to lift it and go back. So I'm going to see if reflected light, like a turquoisey green will work. So I'm just going to go into the water and wet here again under his chin area. He has a chin. And then I'm going to go into my turquoise color that I want to use. And I'm just going to drop a little bit of color in here. And that should bring his face forward. Yeah, it worked. And even though you would think the shadow would be blue, you already got the blue there. I didn't want it to look too dark. Now I'm going to clean my brush. And since this has started to dry, I'm going to get my brush pretty dry, but it's clean. I'm going to go right into my ultramarine, almost like pasty. Wipe it, wipe it. I'm going to use a dry, almost a dry brush to add a little bit of feathers to these wings. And I love all this blur. I love the texture. I don't want to cover up too much, but I think it'll bring it out, bring your eye there if I just do a little bit. Now I can say this bird's in front of this bird, so I'll put a wing here. I love this blur. I'm just going to take the tip of it, maybe the underside. Yeah, I think it's done. Oh, I think I lost you. See, I lost. So I'm going to use my ultramarine. I lost my feet. They kind of blurred in a little too much. So I'm just going to add a little bit of darkness down here. And I'm just kind of checking. You can squint at this point and see where your darkest darks are. See if you need a little bit. Again, you don't want to overwork it. You don't want it to be too perfect. All right. So, birdies, there you go. Birdies, that was I think my second one came out better than my first one. And everybody liked my first one. One thing I think now I see them in comparison, I want this beak to have a shadow on the bottom. So I'm gonna clean this. I'm gonna go into the brown now that it's dry. And I can add a shadow here. Make this bird a little more sophisticated. With a brown beak on that side. Yeah, now I feel pretty close to done. If nothing else, it's time for me to take a break, have a drink of water, walk away from it. But you can see, at least I feel that I really liked my first one. My second one, I like even better. That's kind of how watercolor goes. The more you get used to it, the faster, the better. So I'm going to stop the recording and check in with everybody and see what you think. So I'm going to spotlight Shoshana for a second. Show those here. Okay, so this is hers, and I'm going to spotlight mine and remove hers. Okay, so oops, I spotlighted the wrong. I did my face. Sorry, people. Where's my hand? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is what I would do for hers. So yours, you have all the colors really beautiful. You have the softness inside the bodies. Your picture feels very controlled, and you have a lot of hard edges. I would just take I would get my brush really wet, wipe the sides. So now it's just clean water. Don't be afraid. Just take a wash of water over this, touch into the body, go over this branch, start to create this dappled light. Now that you've made like areas that are wet and some that are not wet, you can go into a little bit of, you'll see it on the video. I'll do it here. I'll do it on this one. So imagine I'm just going to take water. I'm going to go right through my painting and start to soften it. And I'm even going to touch the sides of the birds. See what's going on here? Some areas I'm leaving are wet or dry. That's dappled. Think of dappled light. Think of being underneath a tree. Now I'm going to go into the turquoise. And I'm going to float some blue in here. But I want this free-flowing, painterly. You guys have all done these techniques before. Hi. And it's going to be done in 5 minutes. Oh, come on in. Kai is here. She wants to say hi. But you see how imperfect this is and how pretty it is to be imperfect? And imagine, like, just let yourself touch the side of the birds here. Don't be afraid to let the bird blur into the background. So that's what I would do with your, take some water, wash over this whole back area. And then what I would do with yours after it's dried, I think I would make my wings a little bit darker. and fatter. Your wings could be a little, you could just go right in. I'm going into my blue here. And then just, once it's dry, bring out, Shoshana, your wing a little bit. Oh, well, got that a little fatter than I wanted. But it's all good. Now I'm going to erase it a little bit. Because these little happy accidents, well, people like to look like you've had fun while you were painting, and it makes it kind of much more fun to view. Funner is not a word. I'm just using water because I got a little carried away. There. Okay, I hope you saw that.
Yeah.
And then it'll be on the video. Okay, I'm gonna pause the video again.
Get going.
I'm recording just to show you. So imagine this is the hood thing that you're talking about, is the hoodie. You put a little, take a little bit of water and soften some of it. It's not such a perfect. Say you soften some of it and you put the beak back, and then you go back in and you do some dark on one side. Oops. If you guys, and let it blur. And so one side is darker than the other. I'm having to hold my paper up. Body. On here. And actually, I think this hood thing works a little bit because it's really messy. That's supposed to be orange. That's really bad. Anyways, I'm having a hard time because I'm having to hold my paper up and paint. Actually, what I'm trying to say is oh God, okay, I'm just gonna mess the face up here. Essentially, what you just want to have a darker area on this side. I know you guys can't see this. My lighting here. I can hear somebody's talking about purple. Mary Ellen, is that your husband?
Yeah, I thought I had it on,
And then the other thing is, okay, so here we are. Now I can
I don't know.
darker blue. Can you guys all see mine? The way to change form is to put the warmer blue or green. Now watch what happens on the other side. So if I add some green here, if you're only using blue, add some green, change form. You see? I don't know exactly what, I mean, you're gonna have to mix it to yours, but having the warmer color next to the cooler color, you can change even more by adding, now I'm gonna go into purple. Kaya came to say hi to Charlotte, but I got
Wendra, I'm gonna have to go now, but thank you very much for the class. Enjoy your week.